Hey, have you heard about my AI alter ego? That's right. Ask Alan Anything is now live, and we've trained it on my 13 books. We've trained it on over 200 podcasts. It has most of what's in here, not everything, but most of what's in here. And you can, when you're sitting around going, gee, I wonder what Alan would do in this situation, or I wonder what Alan would say in this situation. Well, now you can. Go to whatwouldallansay.com. Enter the coupon code podcast because you're going to get half off. It starts at only $10 a month. And now when you're thinking, I wonder what Alan say, now you can actually ask. Go to whatwouldallansay.com, enter the coupon code podcast, and start asking me anything. Are you being a silent leader? Listen to this episode. See where I'm going. Welcome to another episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Berg. I'm a speaker, author, sales trainer, website reviewer, and I help businesses like yours sell more, profit more, and have more fun doing it. Enjoy this episode. Hey, it's Alan Berg. Welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. I am so excited to have my friend Andy Neillie on to talk about the silent leader. Andy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, and this is the highlight of my week. I've been looking forward to our meeting, Alan, since you first invited me to log on and join you.
Well, I appreciate it. And you and I hang out and talk, and we have a lot of fun together. But like a lot of my speaker friends and your speaker friends, I follow your LinkedIn, and something pops up every once in a while. I just had Tim Richardson on, same thing. Going to have Robert Kennedy III on, same thing. Something popped up. It's like, oh, that would be really cool for my audience. So you wrote I don't know if it's a blog or a newsletter. I don't know what you describe it
Blog,
as,
yeah, blog, yeah.
about Seth, who is on the keyboard at your church, but in the background, but it's really is really directing everything there. So tell us about that.
Well, Alan, having you on camera, I'm probably preaching to the choir because of your musical background. But yeah, it was brand new to me. My wife and I go to one of these big box churches that's got like a concert for their worship music, and the lights are dim, and there's probably 8 people up on stage. There's a lead singer and a bass guitarist and a drummer and a couple of other guitarists. Somebody's on a 12 string. At times we have somebody on some type of woodwind, and then we've got the keyboardist in the back. And I was visiting with Seth because, Alan, again, you probably already knew this, but I'd noticed Seth, who's become a friend of mine. Periodically he would lean into the microphone when it wasn't singing, and so it's like Seth, the keyboardist, is out of rhythm with everybody else. They're all singing, and then there's an instrumental piece, but you see Seth lean into the microphone. And I asked him what that was about, and he said, well, I'm giving them direction based on what the lead singer and I are looking at coming up. And that led into this whole discussion around Seth is kind of off the lights. You don't really see him unless you look for him. He's in the dark, in the back, and he's not the main play leader, if you would, Alan, but he's working with this lead female vocalist to make sure everybody knows she's going to do one more chorus, or we're going to pick up on the 16th beat, or we're letting that last a little bit longer. Things you would understand better than me. I don't even fully understand it, but he and she need to be on the same page.
Right.
And in some respects, while she's up front, he's really directing everything from the back, and he's doing it without any of us even knowing it. What a great illustration, right?
Right. Because there are people that need to be out front and need to know that, and you and I are on stages at times, right? That's fine, but that's just us, right? We're there, we're the focus. But then there are other times, and I actually have this coming up at our conference this summer, where there's going to be a band, and there's going to be 3 people standing up front singing. But I'm the musical director, and I'm going to be on the keyboard. Just happens to be on the keyboard like Seth. I'm going to be there, and we've already talked about the hand signals and things because we won't have the fancy system that you have at the church where I can talk into their ears.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's it's one more time, or it's stop, or it's whatever. But how does this relate to business? So most of the people listening are smaller businesses. There are some people work for larger companies, but most of them are smaller businesses. Many of them, it's just them. Many of them, it's just a handful of people. So how does this silent leadership come in, and what is the advantage of that versus being that loud up front?
Yeah. Well, my passionate area and the area that I speak into is the area of small business leadership. The Chuck in a truck who today has 50 trucks, and and you know part of the reality of silent leadership is realizing that you can influence decisions with a gentle nudge. You can be at the bottom of the pyramid rather than at the top of the pyramid. In fact, there's times you need to be the quiet voice whispering in somebody's ear. And as I think about particularly the clients you work with, they're working with clients where this is one of the scariest, most exciting, anxiety-provoking highlights of their life. And your clients don't need to be the biggest person in the room at that point. They need to be making sure that the bride and the groom, that the people at the front of the room are in the spotlight, but things happen seamlessly. They're framed in the picture correctly, and it's invisible all of the work it took to make that picture work. The food is laid out beautifully, and nobody has any idea what it took. It's just the bride and groom's choice of the condiments that they wanted to have. And in some respects, I mean, Alan, if your clients do well, what they really do well, their work looks invisible at times. And I
Yeah.
think that's a leadership principle. If Seth does a really good job leading the 8 people on the band, none of us notice because they're always in full sync and we're just worshiping and singing
Yeah.
together. So
Yeah.
you can tell you kind of got me up on my soapbox here about this silent leader idea.
Well, when I was VP of sales at a company, I often said, if I hired the right people, if I gave them the good training, if I gave them all the tools that they needed,
Yeah,
if I gave them not just a responsibility, but authority with that responsibility, it should look like I'm doing nothing.
yeah, yeah,
And if it looks like I'm doing nothing, that means we have a well-oiled machine.
yeah,
If I'm
yeah,
putting out fires all day, that's my fault.
yeah,
That's my fault because somebody doesn't have what they need. Somebody wasn't trained for what they need, or I put the wrong person or
yeah,
the right person in the wrong seat or something like that. And I think that's the same thing with Seth in the background, right? If
yeah,
Seth put the right musicians there and they
yeah,
do their practicing and they do all that stuff, Seth doesn't have to have
yeah.
a heavy hand.
No. No,
Yeah.
well, there's this great research study done a number of years ago. They ended up producing the book called The Work of Leaders by Juliet Straw and several co-authors, but it's really a research piece. One of the things they identified that made an effective leader is they enabled their people to execute. It's the very thing you're talking about. It's not about me, and most of my background comes out of sales leadership like you. It's not about me closing the sales anymore. It's not about me being at the top of the leaderboard anymore. It's not about me being up
Yeah.
on stage winning the Salesperson of the Year award. If I've done a really good job, I'm in the front row cheering my people on and making them more successful. That's the power of a silent leader. Now, part of the challenge in the 2020s in a celebrity influence driven world where we all want to have 10,000 followers is there's a certain level of egolessness
Hmm.
involved in the silent leader, perhaps? Because
Ego. No, there's no egos in the wedding industry. What are you talking about?
yeah, yeah,
But that's the thing is, a wedding an event, corporate event, wedding event, whatever. It's never about you. It's never
yeah,
about the caterer, the photographer, the venue, the seamstress, the DJ, whatever. It's always about them.
yeah,
And there are people that cross that line. They want it to be about them. I remember being at an event a long time ago, and this photographer had a pretty big ego, right? He came in with the "don't you know who I am" kind of a thing. And he had his camera set to, shoot like multiple, like, a lot of shots.
yeah,
But he was like walking around, like just pointing the camera and doing that. I'm thinking, you're not taking any time, right? You can't be that good that you can just like pick up your camera and press the button. Well,
yeah,
because he's taking 50 shots. Well, yeah, one of them might be good. Well,
yeah,
heck, I don't need you for that. I
yeah,
can do that. I can do that.
yeah,
And then you see, the best ones, your your work will speak for itself, but what speaks for itself also is the way you interact with the other people.
yeah,
This is a team. And what you described is this silent leadership is also that the DJ or the band is coordinating with the caterer and they're coordinating with the photographer and the videographer. So the cake cutting doesn't start until all those players are in place. right?
Yeah.
And then you have other times. I just had one. This guy posted. I'm not going to mention names, but it was a DJ was posted about the owner of this venue who is apparently known to be pretty nasty, right?
Mm.
And they had a floor plan where he's supposed to set up, and she says, "No, you're going to set up over here," which was completely bad line of sight and all this kind of stuff. Complaining about the noise level right from the beginning, and you know, he said, "I can't turn the bass off." Like you're not, people aren't going to dance. You know what it sounds like if you're playing dance music and there's no bass, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that. And then she said somebody's going to call the cops on them, and she did on her own venue, right? And the cop shows up and he goes, "I couldn't hear anything outside. I don't know what she's talking about until you
Yeah.
walk inside." And
So
that's not,
probably, in the world that you live in and you speak into, where there are oftentimes these multiple vendors and providers,
mhm.
they have to play well with one another.
Yeah,
This egolessness,
yeah,
um, even if you're really good at what you do and you're dealing with somebody that's not as good as what they do as you are, how do you work to make them look better than they deserve? Because
right.
once again, you want the bride and groom to have a seamless day. You want them to look back 35 years later and say that was the best day of our lives or whatever that is.
Yeah,
And part of that has to do with the photographer not,
being a
having a
jerk.
hissy fit when
Yeah,
the AV group didn't do the lighting the way it was supposed to be done or whatever.
yeah.
The
It,
complicated
it,
world.
well, listen, the world is that we have to take the cards we're dealt, no matter what
Yeah,
that means. And I used to show up at a wedding expo, and I would show up early, set up my booth, and then go around and help other people.
good
Right?
for you.
That's how I got to meet them, and give them a hand. And people, when you help people who didn't ask for help, they remember,
Yeah,
right? And just so many stories that I hear about, like I was talking to this DJ, he said, if I walk into the wedding and I see the photographer and I know this photographer and I know how well we work together, it's like, this is going to be a good night.
yeah,
Right. And then it said, sometimes you walk in and you see who is there and you're like, oh
yeah,
no,
yeah.
this is going to be a problem. Well, who do you want to be known as? Right. That's what it is. A friend of mine just got downsized from her position, and people have been reaching out to help her. And I said, "Yeah, because you've always been a giver, and people want to give when you don't ask, right? They want to give you not because you're asking, but
Yeah,
because you've always given to them." And the same thing
yeah,
happened to me when I got downsized 15 years ago.
yeah, yeah. And that the principle there, it really goes beyond silent leadership. It really goes to kind of that humility to recognize we're all in this together, right? And
Yeah,
that's not a leadership principle. That's not a sales principle. That's a mind your manners principle that book was it 40 years ago, everything I needed to learn, I learned during kindergarten kind of lesson.
right,
But what it does when it's executed well is it lets other people blossom and it
right,
lets events go well and it lets things appear seamless when that silent leader knows it's not really seamless. I got my fingers in 15 different holes in the dike right now, but nobody needs to know about it
right.
because that's not what it's about. There'll be a time afterwards for some debrief and let's review and let's not make the same mistakes next time. But for right now, the
Yeah.
camera's on, the lights are up. Let's make it a seamless experience.
Right. Right now, let's do what we have to do.
Right.
I remember when I was a VP of sales and there was something we were trying to get done, and I suggested something and I got shot down. And then about 3 weeks later, my boss came up with this idea and we got it. And my
Yeah.
sales directors who were right underneath me, one of them said, that's what you suggested. I said, "Yeah, I know. I know." She said, "Well, aren't you going to say something?" I said, "No."
Yeah.
I said, my goal was to get that.
You get it
My
done.
goal wasn't to get credit for that. My goal was to get that. And I think sometimes we have to think about that. What is really important right now? What are we trying to accomplish? And
Yeah.
do I need to be in the spotlight? Because, if you're always needing to be in the spotlight, you're not focusing on the right things, right?
Well, and let's flip that because one of the horror stories I have in my past that is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about good leaders being good leaders is I worked for a boss that no matter what the team did, he always took credit for it. He made himself look good. We would have those ideas you just talked about, and he would take credit for it in front of his seniors, in front of the client. and it just demoralized the team,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And none of us wanted to work for him, and turnover was high, and customer service scores weren't as strong as they could have been because we just didn't care after a while. And
Right.
and so if we're going to continue to use this analogy, the flip side of silent leadership is leadership that has to put itself first. And after a while, nobody
Yeah.
wants to follow that leader. And
Right.
nobody wants to be a part of that band. And nobody wants to be involved in those special events because it's just like, you know what? He just sucked the air out of the room. She just destroyed any motivation I had.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's like,
Right.
I don't want to do that again.
Yeah. When I go to a company and I have the sales team and I say, so how long have you been here? How long have you been here? And when I'm hearing 5 years, 8 years, 9 years, 12 years, whatever, it tells me right away what I need to know about the people above
Yeah.
them. You're not going to
Yeah.
stick around that long.
Yeah.
And I remember in a previous job, I was driving into the office. I worked from home, but I was driving into the office one day, and on the radio that day they talked about the 10 best companies to work for. These are the 10 best companies to work for, and I'm jazzed. And I get into the CEO's office and I said, "Hey, what are we doing to get on this list?"
Next year, next
And
year.
and he goes, "Absolutely nothing." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, we're a new company and we're that shiny object now, and people want to come work for us for a year, year and a half, put us on their resume, go someplace else." I said, that might work for that kid out of college in editorial or whatever. I said, but in my sales team, I want them to be here a long time, right? Now you can churn your other department if you want, but I don't want that. And
Yeah.
and the very first person I hired ended up working for the company for 22 years.
Good for you.
Okay.
For you.
And again, but you want your people to want to work for you. I empowered my people. I used to say I treat my salespeople like I treat my children. And people are like, really? I said, yeah. I respect them. I don't do it for them. I teach them how to do it. I don't do it for them. It's okay if they fail as long as they learn something, right? It's the same things, right? That's what we want for our
Yeah.
kids. And I remember a sales rep came to me and she said, I'm having a problem with a customer. I said, no, you're not. She said, I'm not. I said, would you like to discuss your customer with me? She goes, yeah. I said, hey, what's going on? She told me what's going on. I said, all right, what do you think we should do? She said, you want to know what I think? I said, it's your customer. What do you think we should do? She said something. I said, you think that'll make them happy? She said, I think so. I said, no, will that make them happy? Because that's our goal here. We want to make them happy. She goes, yeah, I think it'll make them happy. I said, okay, then go do it. Right. Because again, responsibility with authority,
Yeah.
right? And I can't fix every problem. Like I said,
No.
if I'm putting out all the fires, that's my fault because I'm making it go through me because I think I need to be the fixer. No, I need to be the empowerer.
Well, so I think that probably leads to one of the underlying principles of silent leadership. It takes a degree of maturity, right?
Yeah.
Because man, Seth, if you know him, he's been playing instruments all his life. He's a talented musician. He's been up on stages since he was in elementary school or middle school. And now he's in the back corner where there are no spotlights on the stage.
Yeah.
And he's just fine with that because he knows it's not about him. And
Yeah.
you and I we both know bosses that invariably make it about them, and nobody wants to be alongside them after a while. Your
Yeah.
your listeners would know this, but Alan, for 15 years, I grew local retail businesses here in Central Texas, where I live. Had as
Mhm.
many as 175 hourly employees doing retail work.
Mhm.
And we owned our businesses for 16 years, and we had retail workers with us for 15 of those 16 years. And I have learned since then that retail people never stay that long.
No.
Well, I don't know if I was ever a really good boss, but the fact that people came and stayed meant that they were finding something that fulfilled them. And part of it
Right.
was I didn't want to take the limelight, man. I want you to go. I want the customers to think you're top of the pyramid. I don't even
Right.
care if they know I exist. I'm not really that important. And,
Right.
part of that sounds like, humble pride thing, but part of it was really they knew how to do it better anyways. I just needed to give them the tools so that they could go do
Right.
their work, right? And when
Right.
Seth is leaning into that microphone, he probably doesn't know how to play that 12-string guitar as well as the 12-string guitar player does, but he knows how to help that 12-string guitar guy be in sync with where the lead singer is taking the next chorus or whatever they're doing. You would
Well,
understand the
yeah.
rhythm of that better than me, my friend, the
Well,
music.
it's the conductor of an orchestra.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Plays some instruments and might play some of them well, but doesn't play all of them,
Yeah.
right? And all of these talented musicians
Yeah.
can't make beautiful music together without the conductor,
Yeah.
right? Now, the conductor is standing there and is that, but the conductor also has their back to the audience.
Exactly right.
They're
Exactly.
facing the musicians there. I don't know if you're familiar with Good to Great and Built to Last by Jim
Oh yeah.
Collins.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those of you that haven't read those books, a
First of
charismatic
all, shame
leader.
on you if you haven't read those
Shame
books.
on
They're,
you.
they're
That's right.
written for
Shame on you.
all good small businesses in the
Yeah,
Western world in the 2020s.
yeah. Good to Great and Built to Last by Jim Collins.
Yeah.
It talks about clock builders and time tellers, right? A time teller like a Lee Iacocca. Chrysler was in trouble. Lee Iacocca was a very charismatic leader, and he had to be that charismatic guy. And Chrysler was Lee Iacocca, one in the same. They were embodied there.
Yeah.
And a time teller, when things are going well, looks in the mirror and says, "Yeah, I'm doing a good job." And when things are going badly, looks through the window at the team and says, "What are you doing wrong?" Right? A clock builder builds a foundation that is strong without them. And they use the example of 3M Corporation, which at the time had five CEOs in over 100 years. They've only had five CEOs. And you can't name any one of them
No,
because it
no.
was never about them. And a clock builder says, when things are going badly, they look in the mirror and
Yeah.
say, "What am I doing wrong?" And when things are going well, they look through the window and say, "You guys are doing a great job there." And that's the thing is, I think maturity is a great thing. Ego, right? Does it have to be about you? With what we're doing with weddings and events, it shouldn't be, right? You want to shine? Great. Go get up on a stage and make it about you. Add value for other people and have that. You've probably had the same thing, Andy. Sometimes people want to give me a level of celebrity because I'm the guy on stage and 15 books and all this stuff.
Global speaking fellow Alan
Global
Berg.
speaking, yeah, yeah, one of 46, right? And I get it because I've been in the audience and then you meet some of the people on stage and they're just a regular person. That's who I want to be. I just have to be good at something,
Right.
but I don't need to be this influencer online. Like some people just need to put themselves out there and all. It's like I don't need it. I'm so comfortable in who I am. So let's go to one more thing before we end. You have a lot of small businesses where it's just them, solopreneur. What can you suggest to them on how to be a better partner when they walk into an event and they have all these other vendors, some of who they've never met, right?
Yeah.
What would you suggest?
Well, because you've led sales teams, one of the key best practices for effective salespeople is pre-call planning,
Yeah.
right? So, do you go into that sales call with the questions you're going to ask, with the objections you're going to anticipate? Do you know what your target A objective is? Do you have a fallback target B? All of that stuff that you've taught so many
Yeah.
people over the years.
Yeah.
I think people that want to be part of teams and be viewed as a team player who is supportive need to kind of do their own pre-game planning and go
Mhm.
into that event, not just saying, I've got my thing, but how can I make other people look good? What can
Yeah.
I do? And so I call it the leader's hour. It's not necessarily 60 minutes and it's not just for leaders, but it's that self-leadership. How do you start the day with some personal disciplines that prepare you for the day? Reflection, prayer, scripture reading for some people, journaling,
Mhm.
how do you make sure you're ready to bring your best self to this event that you're heading into, to the people you're going to be interacting with, to the anxious parents of the couple that's getting married who are afraid they're not going to look good for the photos? And how do you prepare yourself for a day that is just you giving to them? And Alan, you and I, we live in this world where we're up on stages and we're in the front of rooms,
Mhm.
and you and I both hang out with our industry enough to know there's also a lot of people who love that limelight. That's
Mhm.
that's what it's really about. The people that have been around you and me for many years and have built successful speaking and training careers, they're not necessarily the most charismatic. They're not the one that needs to have the spotlight on them. They're the ones that just show up and serve. And
Yeah.
and they may have a communication skill or gift, so they happen to serve from the front of the room at times. But
Right.
at the end of the day, they just kind of want to get down off stage and go and meet with people to see, was this really helpful? And that's
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what I know to be
I'm
true about you.
thinking if if you took the time to find out who else is going to be part of that event, so find out from the couple who else is
Yeah.
going to be part, and if you don't know some of them, reach out and say, hey, we're going to be part of this event together. What can I do to make your job easier? Right?
Looking
Stuff.
forward to working with you. And yeah,
But how can I make your job easier? And they'll say, you know what, the last guy, you know what they did, the last person, this is what they did. Don't do that. And I was like, no, that's very great, but what can I do to help you, right? How can we coordinate together? I know it's going to take time, and I know in your busy season that's a thing, but think about how much smoother this will go. Plus, you end up making allies instead of adversaries.
yeah,
And that's a big thing. People are going to judge you by what you do, not by what you say.
yeah,
And same like with your kids, right? You can't be
yeah.
smoking a cigarette and telling your kids don't smoke.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just not gonna.
and you and I are both committed to helping business people grow their businesses. If you're building allies instead of adversaries, you're creating a referral pipeline at some point as well, and that's it's it's good for business. It's
Yeah.
still just the right thing to do, even if it wasn't good for business, but it's good for business.
Right. And
Yeah,
you don't go wrong doing the right thing, right? Isn't
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what it is. So, all right, and we
Right.
could keep talking for hours, which we will, but just not here on the podcast.
Okay, my friend.
So,
You
Andy, if
got it.
as people, I'll put it in the show notes, but if people wanted to find out more about you, sign up for your newsletter or your books, where should they
Yeah.
go?
Yeah, neillieleadership.com will take them to my website. There's a box on the top. They can sign up for 15 minutes if they just want to pick each other's brain on leadership stuff. Be glad to. And then, Alan, like you, I've got some resources at leadershipmaterials.com. Anybody can go on and download a short little ebook on the 3 imperative leadership conversations that every leader needs to get good at. The
Cool.
leadershipmaterials.com is an easy download.
I'll put all this stuff into the show notes. Andy, thanks so much for joining me and for sharing
Oh,
your
what a
wisdom.
pleasure.
Look
What a
forward to
pleasure.
seeing you this summer.
You bet. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wedding Business Solutions podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe to this channel and post a review on your chosen platform, Apple Podcasts or whichever one. If you have any questions about anything in this episode or any of my episodes, email me directly at alan@weddingbusinesssolutions.com or visit my website, alanberg.com, alanberg.com. If you have any suggestions for future topics or guests that you'd like to see, please again email me or visit my website. Thanks for listening.